All right, everyone, welcome to another segment of Inside Scoop, where I sit down with local experts in the industry, giving you the inside scoop on their knowledge and how it can help you as a client. Today, I'm happy to be with Mr. Curtis Duvall. Curtis and I go way back. We've worked together in the fitness industry before I got into real estate, and we've done a lot of work together since then. So, Curtis, welcome. Thank you for coming here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So go ahead, just start off with who you are, what your background is, and what you do specifically for the real estate industry.
All right, well, Curtis Duvall. I own Kelley Inspection and Safety Services, and I've been doing this now for about 7 years. I retired from the fire service where, believe it or not, we actually learn a lot about building construction. It's part of what we do to know what buildings do, so it keeps us safe when we're in them. But I've spent my entire life doing construction work one way or another. Mm-hmm. My family's all been involved in the business, and I've been exposed to every part and aspect of the construction industry. So
the good and the bad, right?
Yes.
There's plenty. Well, cool. So obviously you're a home inspector. For those people who have never bought a home or been through the process, what is a home inspection?
So, a home inspection is a thorough look through of your property within the standards of the inspection process approved by the state of Maryland. That covers the 5 main components of your home structure: the structure itself, plumbing, roof, HVAC, and electrical. Obviously, we have limitations to the things that we can do.
Sure.
When we occupy somebody else's home that they're still living in, I'm not allowed to move their stuff.
Right.
But within that reason, I will look at every aspect of that home that I can get to and access. I'm really big on attics. A lot of people don't like to go up there because they're afraid of falling through. But as much as people are always worried about a roof because it's such a major component of the home, from the top you don't see a leak or notice that there's issues, but from underneath in that attic you learn everything about it.
Right.
And that is a huge part of doing one of these inspections.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so funny. Anytime that we've been in a home and there's an attic access, you sure enough goes, oh, you're going to leave it open. I'm going to go in there and check it out. And every time you do. And you sometimes find things.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have broken structural components up there. Mm-hmm. I've had times where I've actually done some thermal imaging in a home and be upstairs and I'm like, wow, there's a dark spot there, which is usually an indication of a cold spot in the wintertime. And then gone up into the attic and seen that somebody has removed all the insulation from that part of the attic to do some work or something and never put it back.
Interesting.
So, yes, you're going to have hot and cold spots in your home as a result of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So those of you who may not have purchased a home before, when you go to purchase a home, you have an opportunity to do what's called a home inspection. And as Curtis says, gives you an overview of the condition of the home before you purchase it. And it's super important that you do that due diligence because, as you and I both know, things pop up on inspections all the time. I've never walked into one home, even new construction, where there's not something, and it could be something very small and very minor. It's literally super simple, like some caulking, or major structural issues. So why would you recommend, I kind of highlight a little bit, why would you recommend people do a home inspection? What have you seen in the field that, would signify or really, highlight why they should do that?
Well, you mentioned new homes.
Mm-hmm.
As I've just told you, just down the street here, I've done almost 30 in this one neighborhood. And in 1 year alone, by not assuming that everything is good because it's new, I've opened the HVAC system to the condenser coil, and there sat the reference books for the system sitting on the coil. So
that's a fire waiting to happen.
Well, generally fire isn't the issue, but where it gets highlighted is another one that I did that was a 14-year-old home that the gentleman bought new.
Sure.
He had a service contract with HVAC company for 14 years to service his system, and I still found the book sitting in there. His service people never opened that, never found those books sitting in their plastic cover that now is covered in moisture with mold growing on it.
So much for that, right?
Right. So this is why you always want to have somebody who's going to look at all your components, and especially in the case of new construction, don't assume that everything's okay.
Yeah.
I actually had an outside unit, the air conditioning unit, that the fan was completely missing from the unit.
In the unit. Oh
Yes.
my gosh, that's like a that's like a car not having an engine. It just doesn't make any sense.
Pretty much.
That's
Yes.
a lot, yeah. So the inspection is important, and I would never recommend a client to waive an inspection or buy a home without an inspection. I find it, and I'm sure you heard of it, when it got busy, when it got competitive, and it's still competitive today, people are waiving inspections, saying, you know what, we won't inspect the home, and you could get yourself in a lot of trouble, especially if you're someone who doesn't have a lot of cash to remedy any kind of issues. What is something that you've seen in the home that was a huge, just like your craziest story? You walked in a home, you inspected some things, you're like, whoa, what is this mess?
Wow. I mean, obviously these issues with the HVAC was huge.
Yeah.
But I've had things where in the electrical system, switched outlets is very common in a bedroom. And I walked into the room, I checked my switches first, nothing operates. I expect that because of the way that they do these homes. So I'm like, all right, fine, leave them in the off position. So as I go around and start checking outlets to make sure everything's wired correctly and working, made my way to the closet. I looked in, checked the closet, no leaks, no whatever, door worked fine. Went to turn the light off and nothing happened. It's like, all right, so there's a defect I've got to write up.
Right.
I start continuing around the bedroom. I got to an outlet, no power. I expected that because I switched outlet. I go to turn on the switch and nothing happens. I was like, interesting.
Yeah.
So, again, another thing I'm going to have to write up. But as I was walking back to it, I thought, what were the chances? And I walked into the closet, and the switch for the light in there was hooked to this switched outlet out in the bedroom.
Isn't that convenient? Yeah.
So,
was that a newer home or
that was brand new construction?
Brand new
again.
construction. I mean, again and again, and this isn't an opportunity to bash new construction or anything like that, but
No.
in today's world, builders cannot build fast enough. They're trying to catch up with inventory, and they're pushing their construction people to do work quickly. And when you push to do work quickly, things get missed and errors happen. And that's why it's important to hire someone like Curtis to do that due diligence, to make sure that everything is done appropriately, because the last thing you want to do is pay full price for a home that's not done properly.
Well, and where I find it's even more important is you would make the assumption in new construction that county inspectors are coming out and looking this and signing off on that.
Yep.
And even our standards say that we only have to check a representative number of outlets.
Sure.
If I can get to it, I'm checking it.
Right.
And this is the reason why. Because we know that these inspectors are stretched thin and only can get to so much in their homes in a certain, a normal work day.
Yeah, exactly.
I had a 6-year-old home in Annapolis, beautiful place. And again, doing my due diligence of checking every outlet I could. Most everything in this home was right. One particular room, every single outlet was wired with an open neutral line that just meant the outlet was wired wrong.
Right.
My assumption would have to be that you had an electrical company and it was probably the apprentice who did this room and nobody checked up on his work.
Interesting.
Why that one was different than the rest of the house. So that's why I think it's very important to get to as many things as you can.
Right.
And not just, oh, well, I only have to do this and do the minimum. It's
Exactly.
not appropriate.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, Curtis, your background before getting into like the inspection work and doing what you do now is the fire service, and you did that for a while. Which I get so excited when, one of the first things that I talk to people about when I recommend you as an inspector is that you have the fire background, because obviously with fire safety, it's huge when it comes to homes. And I love highlighting that for people. Like, look, like he's going to do the standard Maryland state inspection work, but he's going to look at things and kind of give you ideas and opinions based on his fire experience background. He's got real world practical experience in the field. And I just love giving families the comfort of that, especially if they have kids and things of that nature. So could you highlight and talk about that and how your service in the fire has helped you in your inspection services today?
Well, understanding safety and means of egress, where smoke and CO detectors need to be.
Yep.
As you know, in the industry, people are like, oh, I made an extra bedroom down here. Let's add that to the listing. But you know that Well, if it doesn't have a proper egress, it can't be done.
Yep.
So, it's things like that, and we know there's always somebody out there that's going to push the limit and try and sneak those things in. But I also tell my clients that, case of my own new home. Mm-hmm. I have an unfinished basement, but it has an egress window built into it, so I have the ability to make that. And I will point that out to people.
Absolutely.
So I get it frequently. They're like, oh, could I do this room? And I'll go in, I'll measure the window, and minimum height to the bottom of the window has to be 44 inches. And if it's not, then it cannot be a legal egress window.
In layman's terms, for the people who don't understand the terminology egress, could you break that down? What is an egress?
So egress is just exiting from the home. And every sleeping area is required to have two ways out.
Yep.
It's a matter of a door that can go anywhere into the home and have a way to get out of the home that way.
Yep.
But a secondary exit does not mean you have to necessarily be able to get out. So we're building 3-story, 4-story townhomes with bedrooms up there.
Yeah.
You have to be able to open the window and have a way out. The theory being that with our construction procedures that we use, you keep your door closed. It buys you time before the fire gets to you, unless the fire department get there to get you out through that way.
Awesome, fantastic. So when someone does an inspection and they hire your services, obviously you go and you do the whole inspection, Maryland state standards. What do they get at the end of the inspection? Do they get some documentation or report? Do they get a certificate? What do they get to kind of highlight that you've done your services?
So any inspector should be providing you with an inspection report. Most everybody nowadays is doing them electronically. I do mine on my phone as I'm going through the inspection, but my software requires me, I go back home, I download it to my computer where we can add in photos. I use a drone for doing inspections of roofs a lot of times now.
Okay.
The homes that they're making are bigger, and even with my 28-foot ladder, I can't reach many of the roofs anymore.
Yep, it's getting taller.
Yes. So I can now download that into my report so that you get everything all together in one spot. Now, what is important to understand is when you read that report, and sometimes this is where I prefer to go through the report with my clients.
Sure.
If they can be on site. Before I go home, I want to be able to talk to them and let them know that there's certain aspects in our report. Understanding that we inspect to best practice, not necessarily code, because the United States has a code.
Sure.
Then each state has their code over that.
Yep.
Each county, and even in some places a city, will have additional codes. And it's impossible to know all the exact codes. But by doing best practice, sometimes we will call out things that you'll see on your report and you'll be like, oh, well, they didn't do that. They met the code, but this is better for you. So case in point would be your outside spigots on your home for your hose bibs. They can put an old school hose bib on as long as they provide shutoffs in the house with instructions to shut them off in the wintertime, drain out the lines.
Sure.
We still write that, or at least I do, recommending a frost-proof faucet, because that provides you protection. Should you forget to turn the system off, you're less likely to have a frozen pipe.
Okay.
So understand that it's not a defect in the house, but I'm giving you information to help protect you with your home long term.
Okay. Very cool. Yeah. And that's a fantastic report. And what's great with Curtis, he CCs me on all that stuff too. He sends it to me so that I can review it and talk to, specific things about my clients. One interesting thing that I get asked a lot, and I know you do as well, is after they get an inspection report and there's things that need fixed or remedied, they always ask, how do you fix this? Or how much does this cost, and things of that nature. So how do you work around those questions? Because technically that's outside of your scope to a certain degree. Am I correct?
It is. So under Maryland's ethics laws, I am not allowed to do work for anybody that I've done an inspection for up to 1 year.
Sure.
The whole process being that they don't want inspectors drumming up more business by finding more things.
Yes, finding more things.
Yes. And I fully support that idea.
Yeah, absolutely.
Honestly, I'm busy enough. I don't need the extra work.
Right.
But if I were to give you prices on what it would cost to repair this or that. It could be construed that I'm trying to gain further business from you.
Exactly.
And honestly, as the systems change, I'll be honest, I don't know all the prices on some of these things.
Yeah,
because I haven't physically done the work.
Right.
I know what needs to be done, but I haven't priced the materials.
Right.
So it's hard, but also that's where you come in, because you're the one that's going to say, well, all right, here's your situation. You know your clients.
Yep.
And you are better suited then to sit with them and say, well, hey, if we can kind of deal with these things, these are the important things we need to ask for. And you know this situation better than I do.
Exactly.
So I always refer to my realtors to handle that.
Yes, exactly. And another thing that I find that clients get confused as well is the difference between like appraisal and inspection. Some clients think that inspection is required. Inspection is never required. Inspection is something you do for yourself, for your own knowledge and information. Now, the appraisal will look at certain factors of the home, make sure that it is sound and have systems. Can you talk about how your service differs between what an appraiser might do in terms of making sure that the home is safe, per se?
So an appraiser is going to look at the basic services. They're going to age things such as HVAC or air conditioning, your plumbing services such as your water heater, the roof. They're not going to physically look at them other than obvious conditions.
Yes.
They're not going to go in and operate them and open them up like I do.
Correct.
So they're just protecting their investment per se for the bank or whoever.
Exactly.
Where our job is to protect you, the client, who's going to be living in the home.
Yes, exactly. It's a big difference, guys. And it's super important, and I stress this. An inspection is for you. It's literally for no one else. It's not for the seller. It's not for me. It's not for the seller's agent. It's not for the bank. It is for you to understand where your home is at, if it's in good standing situation or it is safe. And obviously the appraisal, as you highlighted, is specifically for the bank. Now, one interesting thing I do want to highlight is inspection is often talked a lot about on the buyer side of things when you're buying a home. What I find in a competitive market where, not necessarily now, but where sellers are having a tough time selling a home, doing a pre-listing inspection can be very valuable before you go to market to understand the condition of your home. Have you ever done a pre-listing inspection?
I've actually done quite a few. I mean, they are definitely more of the unicorn of the service, but there are some people who find a great value in it because you'll have a better idea of what the buyer is going to find when they send an inspector out. And you can be prepared to, I'll say, make allowances for things that you know are going to be there, or if there's small things that you could fix before we even put it on the market.
Yep, do it right out of the gate. And that's a really gold nugget. If you're someone who's looking to sell, doing a pre-listing inspection is great. I mean, and inspections, they're range from anywhere between $300 to $500 just for a general inspection. Obviously, it depends on the size of the home. Bigger home, more square footage, it's going to cost more. But an inspection, I think, is a great investment on either end of the deal, for sure.
Yeah.
So, other than that, I wanted to know one last thing before we wrap up. Do you have a favorite story or a favorite memory on a specific house? I know you love old houses. You're big into history houses. Or is there a specific family you have to? Any kind of story that just off the top of your head that you can remember, that something you really enjoyed about your inspection services and why you do what you do?
Well, like you said, old homes really appeal to me. And I had a historic home in Savage, had the walk-up attic. One of those that you can just fully walk through the whole thing, almost make another room out of.
Yeah.
And it was old enough that it had the old knob and tube wiring, of which is basically like an electric fence. It's an insulator with bare wire running to it, running throughout the house. The system was dead. I had to write it up technically because it's there and somebody could accidentally energize it.
It's a hazard.
But it was a great historical feature to see that. But the same home, people had left stuff behind in the attic, and they were old leather-bound college books for a teaching college.
That's awesome.
And I was just kind of joking around with my clients. I was like, well, you might pay for part of your renovations on the home from the sale of these books, because they were beautiful antiques that you don't find today.
Exactly.
You'd be surprised what people will leave behind in a home.
It happens all the time. Your older homes, or any time that you had either an elderly seller who just has stuff and they just want to leave it behind, don't want to deal with it.
Yep.
It's very cool. So anyways, that's going to wrap up this segment of the Inside Scoop. Curtis, thank you for being here.
Absolutely.
I appreciate it. I really enjoy doing all the work with you, and every time I have a Maryland house go up for sale or a buyer representing, I always recommend you first because you do great work, very consistent. If you guys need any inspection service, please reach out to Curtis. He does awesome work. He's very thorough with what he does. He's on time. He's early, actually. Most of the time, he's early. He's there 20, 30 minutes early, already looking at the roof and stuff like that. So
I don't like to make my clients wait outside, especially on bad days like this.
yeah, like it's raining, exactly.
So I like to have that done so they can get straight inside the home.
Awesome. Curtis, where can people find you? You have a social media page, or you have a website?
So I do have a Facebook page, and Kelley Inspections is Kelley. It's not the
EY.
yes,
Cool.
It's not the common spelling people are used to. So I do have my Facebook page. I do have a website for Kelley Inspections.
Awesome.
And you can always reach me at kelleyinspectionsllc@gmail.com.
Perfect. We'll put all the description down below so you can reach out to them. Kelley Inspections with an EY at the end.
Yes.
Awesome. Curtis, thank you for stopping by.
All right. Thank you.